Okay, we're moving into segment 3, the set play. And today we have Mr. Joe94 here. A lot of you would remember him from our episode with Gerald from Quarry Gaming, but if you didn't see that one, just a brief introduction. He is 31 years old and is from Ontario, Canada, and he's born with a disability affecting his hands and arms. He started playing competitively with Street Fighter V, but he grew up playing Mortal Kombat on the SNES casually, and he also played Tekken on the PS2. He actually won our Whiff City tournament 2 months ago, and started playing Street Fighter 6 and attended EVO for the first time this year. He's also been BlindWarriorSven's content manager for 3 years. He also edits for Shass and does graphic design for her. He's been doing that for 2 years. And he is now actually the producer and editor for GSM. So, Joey, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's great to be here again.
Yeah. And then today we also have Shass. She's 36 years old, originally from Sweden, but now lives in the Netherlands. She was born with glaucoma. She had low amounts of vision during her childhood and eventually became completely blind in her teenage years. She is the fiance of BlindWarriorSven, and just like him, plays Street Fighter V exclusively using audio cues, and mainly used Rashid and Jury. Outside of gaming, Shass loves to create with whatever materials she has at her disposal, whether it be clay, wool, mosaics, or her voice. And she has a YouTube channel where she posts the occasional cover or live performance. So Shass, thank you so much for joining us as well.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure for me.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're going to talk about this has been the theme of the episode with Sven, and now Shass and Joey joining us. We want to talk about accessibility and like the state of accessibility in video games. It's been a huge recent topic in the game industry. Both the PlayStation and Xbox have released their own brand of adaptive controllers for those with motor skill impairments. And their console exclusives have been developed with more attention towards blind and visually impaired individuals. The Last of Us 2 and Forza Motorsport have been heavily praised for their visually impaired accessibility. And fighting games such as Street Fighter 6 include detailed audio sliders and additional sounds, and Mortal Kombat 1 has a built-in screen reader. But on the other hand, like games journalists have used the term accessibility when talking about a reduction in the complexity of mechanics or game difficulty, labeling the ability to skip boss fights or even cheat modifiers as making the game more accessible to newcomers. So my question, let's make this a roundtable, is like, what does the term accessibility mean to you, in regards to video games?
Who wants to go first?
Ladies first.
Well, with me. Okay. I think that the term accessibility has been misused so much that people directly think of, which doesn't sound very nice, but that dumbing down a game to make it easy and possible for everybody to play, that means that the game is accessible. So I know that a lot of people not just in the blind and visually impaired community, but in the disabled community as a general, they are thinking more in the way of inclusive design. And I think that's a good way to look at it. So what accessibility means to me is the possibility to adjust a game to make it possible for you to play it with what you have. So if you are blind, that you have the possibility to adjust the sounds, maybe take away the music, or at least lower the volume. If you have limited motor skills, that there are possibilities to maybe switch to a controller that is easier for you to use, things like that. Or if you're colorblind or visually impaired, you can change contrast and similar things. So it's like more a broader inclusive way of thinking of how do we include people who are not 100% able-bodied in our game without having to change the game. As you know, that we don't have to make the game easier, we don't have to make it simpler, we can make it just the same experience but played in different ways.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to make, because I do think that there's a distinction between like dumbing down a title and making it like accessible to a wider audience, and let's count like people that are differently abled as like a wider audience. And
Absolutely.
I do, and like you said, like they do really blur the lines between accessibility for people with impairments and accessibility as in bringing in newcomers as one and the same. Do you think that this is like an industry-wide issue where they're calling it calling that accessible, or do you think that it's just like games journalists like missing the point of accessibility? Like part of my background is software design, so like I understand like the need for accessibility and making sure, you know, colorblind people have an easy time reading websites,
Right.
on through to screen, and making sure screen readers are working properly for visually impaired people. So like I totally get it, but I've never viewed it as a dumbing down thing. It's just making it's making it cast a wider audience, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's why I think they are mixing up the terms. And maybe it's like you said, that it's a lot of the journalists, they're just grabbing for a term they can use, and they use accessibility in the way of also making the game appeal to more players is maybe a good way to put it, like to draw more players in, and it is yes, it's accessible. So that's why I am thinking that the disabled community are trying to change the term from accessibility to inclusivity, to make a distinction between the two. And I think it's also what you said, it's probably a little bit industry-wide. It's become so mixed up that maybe even the developers themselves don't know exactly what's what anymore.
That's a fair point. But yeah, like I think calling it more inclusivity, or like I don't know, like I would, because like we've dealt with difficulty sliders throughout the history of video games. Like I think the accessibility term has really cropped up in that difficulty level in recent years, just because you have games like Dark Souls or Sekiro that are like meant to be insanely hard no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And you see a lot more games now that are like decreasing the difficulty based on sliders. Again, I think that's come back into the forefront. But to call it accessible, I'm not sure what term I would say as well. For me, like I would just, it's really hard, because a lot of people now view that as accessibility when even like governmental like oversights and regulations would call accessibility like helping people with disabilities like be able to use game like software or games or anything.
The whole point is for everybody to be able to access the features, isn't that? I mean, that's the point. So when governments are using it in terms of how websites are working, or that they are trying to sort of enforce a rule that, for instance, a gaming console should be possible to use for somebody who is blind or deaf or have limited motor skills, that's indeed what accessibility is. So I think when they are talking in difficulty terms and stuff like that, that should be called something else.
Yeah.
It is a way of letting people that are maybe not as quick in reactions or maybe have cognitive disabilities. I mean, in that way, it is also an accessibility feature, because then it's possible maybe for them to enjoy the game up to a certain level, but maybe it should be put under another label. But that's not for, I mean, I'm not a game developer and I'm not an expert. I'm just, thinking out loud.
No, I think that's a good distinction to make, because there are big, and I think maybe there is some talk to be like, okay, yeah, maybe this is still like a bit of accessibility, because yeah, like you said, there are cognitively disabled people that could like benefit from like lower difficulty levels and actually be able to engage in stories and video games, whereas they would normally not be able to. So that's a fair point. Another question that comes up is like, and I want to hear from everybody on this one for sure, is like, what are some examples of games that have done accessibility correctly?
Actually, I want to talk about the first one.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Joe. Sure. Sorry.
I think when it comes to the motor skills aspect, I'm going to use Street Fighter as an example for this. You have to be very careful with how you balance your accessibility when it comes to controls. Like, I don't see many people talk about this, but when it comes to modern controls in Street Fighter, when you play against someone with modern controls, you fundamentally have to change your tactics against them. Because, you hit one button, you get to react to anything in the game now. And people who are fully able-bodied can use that to their advantage. And Chris F. actually came up with a solution to that. He said, I don't know if he used this exact terminology, but he said, you have to figure out what the average input time for, say, a Dragon Punch is, and add that startup animation time to the input window for modern.
That's true.
Now, some would say, yeah, get good, just adapt. But for example, Sven and Shass, they have no idea if the opponent's using modern controls because the game doesn't tell you.
I was actually going to ask that too. So like, yeah, that I didn't know like if you actually get told whether it's modern or not. So that's rough.
I'll see
Maybe
Sven
Sven
get
has-
Dragon Punch 10 times in the first round, and he's like, is this modern?
Yeah, I was going to say maybe Sven want to put in his 5 cents on the topic.
Yeah, of course. Now, first of all, when it comes to accessibility, I agree with Chassis when she says that these days people are mixing up accessibility with difficulty, which of course has some comparisons with each other. But accessibility, in my opinion, means that a game in this case needs to provide the options or the features to make it possible for an individual person to play the game on a certain level. And if that means that the game needs to be in a specific how do you say that, brightness, or that the game needs to provide certain audio cues in order to cover situations, or for example in the game like Last of Us that was mentioned before, as a blind player you can play the game up to a certain level because there are parts of the game that you will just be taken by your hand and be guided through the game instead of walking yourself or finding out the way that you have to go in that situation. And for hardcore people that sound like boring, which I understand, but if you are blind, it means so much that you can still play a game even if at some point you are guided through specific parts easily, but you can still enjoy the story. There is still enough situations that you need to make decisions or do fights or something. And if that is what you enjoy in a game, and if both options are available, either playing the game hardcore without any assistance or playing the game with accessibility features on, I won't say that there is a discussion necessary then, because be my guest to everybody, so to say. And when it comes to the discussion that Joey specifies in modern control in Street Fighter 6, I understand that it is a discussion, and is modern control meant to be an accessibility feature for people who are, now, for example, missing fingers that cannot press all the buttons at the same time? Or is it a way to include more people that are struggling with fighting games with motions? I mean, after all, if you look to the Street Fighter 5 player base and the Street Fighter 6, I think in Street Fighter 6 there are much more players worldwide playing the game, and I'm not sure if that is because of modern control. I'm not sure if that is because of the open world features in the game, or that it is just a new generation that started playing fighting games, or even the Capcom Cup prize pool has increased. Maybe it's a combination of them. But modern control is, it is something to debate. After all, everybody can use it. So if modern control seems to be a feature that is overpowered, for example, then it's still possible for everybody to take advantage of that. If you want that is another question. Personally, I am a Street Fighter player or a fighting game player from the old school, so I would like to do motion inputs, because otherwise it feels like missing something. But if I was just a newcomer in the fighting game community, and I was like, whoa, this is cool because I can do special moves by just pressing a single button. I don't know if there is a right or wrong in this case. What is important is that you indeed, as Joey said, that they balance the game somehow, and that they, for me as a blind player, will make it possible that I can hear before a match starts if somebody is using modern control or not. Because as Joey said earlier, it is a different approach to an opponent that is having the ability to use modern control or playing classic.
Yeah. So like that is something that I think should definitely be addressed, because like I don't think modern's going anywhere nowadays. So like I was unsure whether there was like accessibility options where you could like hear whether they were playing modern before, but if there's none, I'm kind of surprised that something hasn't been done about it. So
it would be so easy for them to just have the speaker voice say modern. When your opponent shows up, that would be so easy.
Or classic, or
I mean, say modern or classic. And you're done. You don't need to do anything else. If they could add that little clip that says on which side you are, they can add this.
That's true.
And even give an option to turn it on or off, because some people doesn't want to have that sound, and that's totally fine.
Exactly.
So I would suggest include that in a future update, which should not be such a problem.
Do you remember Street Fighter 5 system voice? That said a lot of stuff.
It's on a million things before you started.
It would even say things you didn't care about. You would be like, I don't care.
Your opponent has a 5-win streak. Okay, I want to ruin that guy.
Get your aggression going.
And the problem also these days, when it comes to accessibility features, is that game developers in general, I think, are, how do you say that, are searching for ways to include accessibility features, and that they actually think, okay, I put in bigger fonts or specific fonts in the game, so it's accessible. For people that need those, but it's not accessible for somebody that can completely not see at all. For example, if you take a game that has very nice audio in the game, very crisp, very clear, very detailed, it still not make the game accessible for a blind player, because if the audio is not giving the information you need as a player in order to play the game, yeah, it can be as nice and as good as crisp as clear as it is. But if you don't hear if an enemy is coming towards you, or that he is walking behind you, or yeah, it doesn't matter if you hear that his footsteps are echoing in a cave and that there are drops, water drops falling on the ground or something like that.
That is true. So I guess one question that just came to mind is like, I know that like in the EU, Canada actually has some of the best regulation when it comes to like accessibility, as far as like websites and software. But I don't know how far that extends. Like to be honest, I'm not fully read up on any of like the regulations as far as like gaming software. But do you think that regulation from like governments could actually help drive game developers to think more about these things and like have these like exact criteria that needs to be met for your game to be considered accessible? And if it's not accessible, like we can say you can't sell the software in a region. Do you think that would help?
Do I think it would help? I'm not sure, because they would argue then, are you going to pay the software developer to include those features for us? Because just to add a screen reader, I think support, or depending on the game engine, they have to do that from scratch. And that could cost thousands of dollars just to do that. And is the Canadian government going to give them a grant for that? No? Well, then I'm sorry, but...
Yeah.
I agree with Joey in that, after all, at the end of the day, game developers, except a few maybe, they want to earn money. And if you look to the player base for their games, there is such a small percentage of, now let's say Street Fighter. If you look to the total player base, how many completely blind players? Because I know there is a discussion between what is blind. In the Netherlands where I live, if you are blind, that means you don't see a fuck. Sorry for my words. You don't see anything. While in the US, you are already called blind if you cannot get your driver license, because you cannot see enough for that. So
admittedly, you're called legally blind, but
Yeah.
nobody will use that term.
No. I mean, I have seen so many people on my stream that say, yeah, I'm blind too. And then when you ask further, they can still see the screen. So
or they go on their bike to work and we are like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But that's another discussion. So if you are looking to Street Fighter, and the total completely blind players in their player base, I think it's not even 1%. It's probably way lower. So Capcom is probably thinking, okay, how much will it cost us to include a screen reader, accessibility features? They need to pay a developer or maybe more to include that, because it is some kind of specialism to include it in your program. And how much will it earn? Will it earn us? On the other hand, especially in these days, when everybody is talking about inclusivity, it doesn't matter if you are what you think about things in life, what gender you have, what disability you have, what skin color you have. And of course that is absolutely right, but it doesn't matter. Everybody needs to be included. And this time a company can also get a lot of goodwill from the audience if they put effort in inclusivity. And that can also be good for a company. So it's not only about how much will it earn us? It's also okay. We show the world that we are doing our best for including everybody, which can in the end get them more in return than just selling copies of the game. And when it comes to government support, I would say that if a government is, how do you say that, requiring companies or game developers to include certain accessibility features, then the same government should also uh, be able to provide support for that. And I can imagine that a company like Blizzard or Microsoft or Capcom or SNK or Ubisoft or all those big EA, all those big companies, for them, it's actually peanuts to invest in accessibility because there is so much money in those companies. They don't need it. But how about the indie game programmer, that one guy that is creating a game in his spare time? If he needs to include accessibility features and he needs to do research for that, it's going to be very time consuming. It's going to be very expensive. So for those developers or small companies, it would be cool if they could get some kind of funds from the government in order to include those features, either by hiring people to do it for them or helping them with getting a living while they are programming their game. So that might be an option in my opinion.
I think it's funny that you mentioned the indie games possibly having a problem with this when we consider how many indie games are actually accessible compared to how many main titles are.
Yeah.
I mean, there are more indie games that are playable for blind and visually impaired people, maybe people with other disabilities as well, than there are actual mainstream titles. So
That's true.
which is not to say that they don't deserve funding, because they absolutely do. These people should have all the kudos and credits for doing the amazing thing, and the big guys actually should have a slap on their fingers for not doing it if the indie game people can. But I thought it was a funny comparison, since there are so many indie games that actually have accessibility options.
Yeah,
and features.
but you don't know their backgrounds. I mean, maybe they have used crowdfunding in order to get
Some of
funds
them
for
probably
that.
have.
Oh
and
yeah,
some,
no,
some probably do it because they think it's cool and they do it in their free time, and there are probably 1 billion different scenarios. I think something that could be good in addition, maybe to government funding, or well, if we even ignore the government being a part of it, I think is community encouragement. I think it's very important for the gaming community as a whole to ask, to demand, to require, to request accessibility options. And it should, of course, be toggleable options. I mean, that you can adjust the game to your liking, turn things on and turn things off, and sliders, whatever. That's not the point, but that everybody who is in the gaming world should say, okay, it's fun, I want to play this game, awesome, but I also want you to make it accessible for my neighbor who is blind, and my brother-in-law who is deaf, and my uncle who has only one leg, and my grandpa who I don't know, cannot,
whose reactions are like
whose reactions are slow. Exactly, that's
yeah.
what I mean. So because everybody knows somebody who has some kind of disability, and it can be physical, it can be cognitive, it can be mental, doesn't matter, but everybody knows somebody. And what's even more important is the game developers often think in ways like, okay, accessibility features, why should they include a certain part of the community, for instance, the blind community or the deaf community or whatever? Why should they put that extra effort in? Because the player base is comparatively small to the able-bodied kind of person. I wanted to say to the able-bodied part of the community. But disability can happen to anybody at any time, any day. Say that you are fully functioning today and tomorrow you fall from the stairs and you hit your head, and maybe it hits on exactly the spot that will knock your eyes out. Or you are involved in an accident and you lose your hearing, or you lose an arm or a leg. Doesn't matter. I mean, it can happen to anybody. It can happen any day, and suddenly you are part of that community, and you can benefit from the accessibility options in a game. And I think they forget that. Also, we get older, so people with perfect vision when they are younger, well, they can also get glaucoma. They can also get cataracts or something else. They can get a, thrombose in an eye or whatever. It doesn't matter. It can happen to anybody, and it can happen any day. So inclusive design is not just important for us who have things now. It's important for everybody.
Yes.
Although there is one point that I want to add in here. The problem also with accessibility is how far will you go? Let's take Street Fighter as an example, and I'm going to summon a couple of disabilities, and let's see if they are already covered or what you should do in order to cover them. Okay, you are blind. Now, Street Fighter 6 has very nice audio cues. They cover a lot of action in the game. I would say like 95 or more % of a fight is covered in different audio cues. If you are deaf, now you can, I think, play the game without so much of an issue. If you are partially sighted, as far as I know, you can still use the audio cues as well as do some settings when it comes to fonts and resolution and stuff like that. Joey, if you don't mind, if you have problems with your hands, even more than you have, you could probably play as with modern control. Yeah, I know you don't like modern control. You play classic, which is very awesome. Consider your condition. But let's say that you have even less fingers or motor skills, then motor control is an option. But how about grandfather that is 70 years old and wants to play but has a buffer time of like so many frames before he realizes what to input? Will you make the game give an option to slow it down up to like 10 frames per second? Question.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, will you do that to include those people?
Development time has to end at some point, essentially.
Yeah, at some point you need to say, okay, this is accessible for the biggest part of the player base, but you will still have people that won't be able to play it. And that is something it's said at one point, but yeah, is it something that should be forced by government? Because if a government is saying in a law or in an act or whatever, say, okay, we want to include everybody with this and this and this and this and this disabilities. Yeah, at the end, is a game then still fun to play? Is it playable? I won't say it doesn't work, but you should be very careful by implementing those features that it is not breaking the game as it is meant to be.